The Neves family lived in the quiet town of Itapicerica de Serra in late May 2025. One day, a package showed up at their door. There was no call, message, or warning, just a courier, a nicely wrapped box, and a letter with only a few words written by hand. In the beginning, nothing seemed strange. Teenagers often give and receive gifts and actions without planning to. No one thought anything strange about the delivery. But the very next day, a string of small events that didn't seem to be connected began to happen. Anna Neves, who was 17, died. As of late, the house was being investigated by the government. It used to be full of the sounds of normal life. I thought there were no signs of a crime at first glance. There were no signs of violence or forced entry, but the more the police looked, the more they saw. There was something much more complex going on. A simple question was the start of the research. Who sent the package and where did it come from? It wouldn't be easy to give an answer. It made detectives question everything they thought they knew about how people act. About 22,000 people live in the small town of Itapicerica. She went to João Baptista de Oliveira High School and was 17 years old. Her teachers and peers said she was polite, quiet, and thoughtful. People rarely saw her with big groups because she liked being with her close friends. She didn't try to be famous, stayed out of fights, and mostly kept to herself. People who knew her say that Anna was nice and gentle, not the type to cause trouble or take risks without thinking. But some people, especially one friend, saw through her quiet confidence and picked her out. A girl named Carmen, who asked not to be named, was one of Anna's best friends. They did a lot of things together after school, on the weekends, and at sleepovers. It looked like they were really friends. She spent a lot of time at Anna's house and knew her family very well. They texted each other every day, told jokes, sent pictures, and talked about normal things. People around them thought they were almost always together. But for Carmen, being close to him became a drag over time. She started to feel like she was living in the shadow of someone she used to think of as her best friend. Carmen was very sensitive and had mood swings all the time. Most people didn't notice at first. She seemed friendly and upbeat, but she was really struggling with thoughts of not being good enough. She thought Anna was more beautiful, more confident, and more important than she was. Anna seemed to be able to do everything with ease. Carmen began to think of her as the reason she felt bad about herself. Anna's family was there for her and active in her daily life, especially her father, Silvio, and her younger sister. Their house was safe and quiet. People took care of and paid attention to Anna. They kept up with her schoolwork and growth and knew what she was doing every day. The similarities Carmen made had grown stronger by the spring of 2025. Thoughts that started out as random ones caused by praises Anna got or pictures they took together turned into always observing. Every accomplishment Anna had made me think of what Carmen was missing. They never fought directly, but Carmen was very aware of how other people felt about her and Anna. Small movements, looks, and comments made without meaning to. Things began to have a deeper, more secret meaning. Nothing looked different on the outside. They still texted, hung out, and went to school together, but Carmen's behavior grew farther away. Her answers stopped being thought out. On an emotional level, she was pulling away. Anna's lack of attention made her the most angry. She always treated Carmen the same way, not knowing that her friend was having a hard time inside. Carmen was even more angry about this lack of understanding. She thought that her anger was right. Her appearance alone made her feel like Anna had taken a space that didn't belong to her, even though she didn't think Anna was mean. At the same time, Carmen started to think of ways to make things better. She didn't tell her family or friends how she felt. Her thoughts were getting more and more separate. She finally told herself that speaking up wouldn't make things better. No one would get it. That way of thinking made her want to do something, but they couldn't do anything in public. A fight in public would hurt her reputation and make people wonder too many things. Carmen started to think of other ways to do it. She became more and more interested in stories about how people could hurt others without leaving clear signs. Carmen started to learn more about substances, food allergies, and how to make dangerous actions look like kind ones. Her phone was the only thing she used. She didn't write anything down, leave any digital traces, or make any threats. It was clear that this was going to happen even at this early stage. She was considering her choices, working out how to stay out of trouble, and imagining what might happen. In May, Carmen's mental state had changed into a constant state of hostility. She put on a good show on the outside, but she was no longer looking for connection or understanding. She only thought about one thing at a time: planning. That's when the thought came to mind. Show something that seems harmless and can't be linked to any kind of violence. Carmen no longer thought they were really friends after that. It turned into a chance for her, a way in. Anna believed her, let her help her, and never asked her what she was up to. That trust would set the stage for what came next. Carmen's behavior didn't seem to have changed. She seemed steady at school. She did well in school and didn't get into any trouble. On the inside, though, she had already done something wrong. She thought she had the right to get rid of the thing that was making her angry. She planned, took her time, and did all of her preparations in secret. Carmen looked for a way to attack that would be hidden and hard to track. There was an attempt to hurt someone by Carmen 2 weeks before Anna's death. She first went after a student with whom she had a fight in the past. The cause is a private matter. Carmen started going out with 2 guys she had dated before. The situation made her very nervous. She saw it as an attack on her person. Her friends and teachers didn't notice that her mood had changed. Carmen chose to move forward in a way that wouldn't commit her to the result, even though she started to avoid the classmate who was making her angry. She got a cake through a third-party delivery app, making sure that her real information was not used. A fake card was used to pay. It was set up through a site where couriers can pick up jobs without being identified. Other than a short chat, she didn't have any direct touch with the person making the delivery. She put in the address of the person she was sending it to and added a note with a bland message. The name of the sender was left out. Her goal was to make it look like the cake was given by someone nice or romantic. A poisonous material was the main part of the plan. It was gotten by Carmen through an online service that took digital currency. She chose a vague item description that didn't match the contents to hide what the buy was really about. The package arrived in plain packaging and without any noise. When Carmen took the batter to a restaurant, she said it was her own recipe, even though she had mixed the substance herself. The bakery staff didn't know anything was wrong because they followed the directions, finished the order as asked, and then gave it to the delivery driver. The cake was delivered on time to the receiver. As soon as she ate it, she started to feel sick, with severe stomach pain, nausea, and puking. Her parents called the police and fire department. The person was taken to the closest hospital. The diagnosis was a serious case of an illness caused by food. There was no reason to think foul play was happening right away, so there was no toxicology test. Her situation got better within a day, and her life was no longer in danger. From what they saw, the symptoms were probably caused by an outside source of a contaminated ingredient. There were no formal consequences for what happened. The recipient's family never called the police. The cake was thrown away, and the package was not kept. No one in the girl's group of friends looked into it any further. There were no rumors at school or among friends that the nameless dessert had anything to do with something bad. No one thought it was strange to get a special treat. People had this happen before, usually around holidays or important personal events. Not even teachers saw anything strange. Carmen carefully watched what happened and came to the conclusion that her plan had worked in theory, but wasn't carried out well enough. The target had lived, even though the signs were very bad. Carmen knew she would need a more accurate dose and a better way to give the medicine. She didn't say she felt bad about what she did or stopped doing it. If anything, what happened made her more sure that she could do what she wanted to do without being caught. The specifics of this earlier event were only found out later during the main probe. No one knew until that point that a spoilt treat had already been used in a similar plan. It happened more than once. It was just a test. This led detectives to believe that what happened to Anna wasn't an accident, but rather a well-thought-out plan that was carried out over and over again. In the evening of May 30th, 2025, the Neves family got a package they didn't expect. At 5:45 p.m., a messenger showed up at the door. He didn't say his name, ask any questions, or ask for a signature. It was just a plastic box with a cake inside that he gave her. The package seemed normal. It was clean, clear, and the same as anything you'd buy at the store. A scribbled note was stuck to the lid. The sender's name wasn't written down. At that time, Anna wasn't home. The package went to her younger sister. There was nothing wrong. The cake looked whole, smelt fine, and didn't make anyone suspicious. She left it on the kitchen counter because she thought it might be a gift from a friend or acquaintance. Then she went back to her normal routine. A little after 6 p.m., Anna got home. She didn't do anything crazy when she saw the cake and the note. The gift was made by her sister, who also gave her the box. Anna looked at the note. The message wasn't clear. There was no welcome or name-calling. She still thought it was a nice thing to do. She took out her phone, took a picture of the cake and the note, closed the box, and then took a bite. The first few bites didn't taste at all strange. In the beginning, Anna only felt a small heaviness in her stomach, which she didn't give much thought to. She kept talking with her sister and doing the things she always did in the evening. But after about 40 minutes, she said she was feeling more and more uncomfortable. In her gut area, a dull pain had begun to appear. It took longer for the signs to get worse. Soon after, the first signs of feeling sick showed up. Anna ran to the toilet. She started to feel weak and dizzy. She then felt her hands shake and a wave of heat go through her body. Her family became worried, but at first, they thought she might have just been sick from eating something bad. They told Anna to take it easy. She was helped into bed, given water, and given standard over-the-counter medicines to help. Things did get worse in the next hour, though. The feeling of being sick came back, and this time it was followed by vomiting and then diarrhea. Anna was too weak to get up. Even small movements made her feel bad. She was still awake, though, and could answer questions, though it was hard. As the night went on, her dad suggested that she call 911, but Anna claimed that she could handle things on her own. Her mom agreed to let her feel better in the morning. During the night, her problems didn't go away. By morning, she looked very tired. She moved slowly, and it was clear that her power was going away. But there were still no clear signs of something worse for the family. They hoped that she would start to feel better after some rest. Anna was still in bad shape on the morning of May 31st. She had trouble standing up, lost her balance, and refused to eat. Her parents chose to get help from a professional. The closest urgent care center was close by, and her dad drove her there. At the time of input, the medical staff saw signs of severe dehydration, including weakness and stomach problems. It was hard for Anna to stand up, and she was talking slowly. During the first test, doctors ruled out any infectious diseases. The first opinion was that the person had very bad food poisoning. Because her symptoms fit a typical pattern, she didn't need any more tests. Anna's medical background didn't show any long-term problems or reasons why basic treatment shouldn't be used. She was put on an IV drip, given drinks with electrolytes, and given medicine to make her feel better when she was sick. The temperature of her body was normal, even though her blood pressure was unsteady and her heart rate was high at the start of treatment. The symptoms started to get better after 2 hours. She stopped throwing up, and her skin got a little better. Anna told the staff that she was having a little better day. The doctors chose not to admit her because she was getting better. She was sent home with orders to keep drinking water, take her medications, and stay with her parents. There were no orders for chemical tests. The medical staff didn't ask Anna a lot of questions about what she ate the day before. Her family didn't talk about the cake delivery because they didn't think the symptoms were related to any one food. People thought that the chance of poisoning was something that happened at home and didn't need any more research. Because of this, no biological samples were kept, and no leftover food was gathered or checked before it was released. Anna didn't feel a lot of pain. With the help of her dad, she left the office. Standard recovery directions were given to the family, and the signs of improvement were seen as good news. They thought that her situation would get better in 24 hours. The medical staff didn't raise any red flags about possible problems. Anna's folks noticed that night that she had become very quiet. It looked like she wasn't personally attached because she barely talked and didn't interact with anyone. They said it was because she was tired from the trip to the hospital and still weak from being sick. A follow-up meeting wasn't planned. The family did what the doctor said and stayed hopeful that she could get better at home. There was worry in the air on June 2nd morning. Her mother knocked on the door, but Anna wasn't there for breakfast and didn't answer. Anna was lying in bed with her eyes open when her mother walked in. She didn't seem to notice her voice much. She didn't ask for anything to eat or drink, and her answers were short. No one was sure if she needed to be helped right away, because her behavior suggested that she was still tired. Anna slowly got up in the late morning and walked to the toilet. Her moves were slow, and she held on to the wall to keep herself up. Anna's sister offered to help, but she made a sign that she was fine. When she got back to her room, she shut the door behind her. She spent the rest of the day alone and didn't answer her phone or read her texts. Because they thought she needed time to rest, her family gave her space. Her dad checked in again around 3 p.m. Anna answered, but it took a while. She spoke with a slurred voice and moved very slowly. He told her to call a doctor, but she only gave him a small nod and walked away. Her condition looked unstable, but it wasn't instantly a cause for concern. The family chose to wait and keep an eye on her because they thought it might happen again, like the last few days. By 4 p.m., her mother came back to tell her to take her medicine. There was no answer. Anna was still lying down where she was. Her skin was too pale for her. Touch didn't make her move. They called her name and tried to gently shake her. Not an answer. Fear set in. Right away, her dad called the emergency services. Her mother and sister tried to wake her up while they waited for the team to come. There was no sign that they were breathing. In just 10 minutes, rescuers arrived and started saving lives. Nothing worked, no matter how hard they tried. A doctor said that Anna was dead. Early results showed that the heart arrest happened only minutes before they got there. The whole family was shocked when Anna died. She had just been let out of the clinic the day before, and her health seemed to be getting better. Her family and friends didn't have time to fully understand what was going on. People right away wanted to know what happened to cause such a sudden and terrible result, but there were no clear answers. The exact cause of death was still unknown. The family wouldn't go into Anna's room. Her dad made it clear that none of her personal things should be moved. When he called the center to ask about her most recent treatment, he only got a standard answer that mentioned the earlier diagnosis. That night, he started to think back over the last few days and try to figure out what might have happened that could have hurt Anna's health. At that point, her sister brought up the cake delivery. What had seemed like a small, unimportant detail became very important all of a sudden. As soon as it was confirmed that Anna had died, her father started looking into what might have caused her death. The timetable fits together. He remembered that the cake arrived just before her health started to get worse. Her sister confirmed that during that time, no other new foods had come into the house. The family came to the conclusion that the cake may have been the start of everything that happened afterward. Neves went to the cops that night to make a report. The police took the statement and began an investigation. The first step was to find out where the delivery came from. Thankfully, the cake box hadn't been thrown away. They found a sticker from a small bakery in the same town on the bottom of the box. Investigators went to the place marked on the sticker and talked to the owner there. The bakery owner checked the packaging the next day to make sure it was the same as what they usually use and to make sure that an order had been made around the date they thought it would be delivered. However, there was no real name given when the order was sent. That it was put up online through a website with a simple sign-up process. The customer put in their card information, phone number, and delivery location. In the comments area, they asked for a specific note to be written by hand and put in the box. The staff didn't try to find out more. Delivery was made by a third-party driver who was hired through a messenger app for gig work. He didn't work directly for the bakery. Instead, he took orders based on open jobs on the site. The police were able to get into the account that was used to place the order. The platform gave technical information such as the account holder's phone number and the IP address from which the request was made. The messenger who had made the delivery was called by the police. He told the police that all they sent him was the location and a description of the item. A box of food from a bakery. The app had already taken care of the payment. He took the package, brought it to the address, and then gave it back. He never looked inside or asked any questions. This exchange seemed normal, and there was no reason for him to be wary. The big break came when the police found the IP address that was used to place the order. The address that was given was for a private area in the same neighborhood where the Neves family lived. After more research, it was found that the device had viewed online accounts belonging to a student at the same school as Anna. The location was the same as Carmen's house. The police went to the house right away. People who know the suspect's parents were told about the investigation. Carmen was asked to come in and be questioned. She didn't refuse to talk, and she kept her cool during the first chat. She first said she didn't place the order and had nothing to do with the arrival. She said it's possible that someone else used her account without her knowing. Investigators did, however, have access to digital data. The device that placed the order had never logged out of the account, and Carmen had used the email address linked to the profile to get into school systems. As soon as she heard this, she started to contradict herself. Her attitude changed. She dodged direct answers and looked like she wasn't sure what to say. She finally admitted that she had made the order herself after being questioned for several hours. Carmen at first said it was just a joke when asked why she did it. She later admitted that she had hoped Anna would get sick, but she didn't think anything bad would happen. It was confirmed that what she said was a confession. The case files were given to a division that specializes in cases involving minors, and Carmen was put under close supervision. The public wasn't told right away about the facts. The suspect's name was also kept secret, but word quickly got around the school about what happened. Anna's friends were shocked. No one had ever thought of Carmen as someone who could be mean or mean-spirited. Teachers agreed that she had never been in trouble with the law or behaved in a way that was troubling. Carmen's name was kept secret by everyone who testified. The reason for this was a digital trail that was left behind during the probe. Before that, nobody thought she had anything to do with it. That is what shocked everyone when she told the truth. It was hard to believe that someone so close to Anna could have done something like that. But the agents not only had a full confession, they also had digital proof that couldn't be argued with. The police found out that Carmen had ordered something chemically online. Even though it said low toxicity, she used a chemical that is known to be harmful on purpose. She didn't try to lie about it. She just told them straight out how she put it in the cake. Carmen said in interviews that she didn't hate Anna, but she felt like she couldn't breathe around her. She said that Anna was always in the center without trying, but she had to work hard to get any attention. Comparing things all the time made me more and more angry. Carmen was too focused on the little things, like how other people saw Anna, the praise she got from teachers, and the approval she never got for herself. They made her feel like she wasn't good enough over time. One more thing that came out of the probe was that this had happened before. Carmen had tried to hurt another student 2 weeks before Anna died. A psychology evaluation showed that Carmen had an unhealthy need for approval from other people. But even though she seemed calm on the outside, she often kept her anger and worry inside. She wasn't openly mean or looking for a fight, but she was focused on what she thought were her flaws and saw attention from other people as a personal loss. Compared to other people, she always felt like she fell short, which hurt her sense of self-worth. Over time, this turned into the idea that getting rid of the things that made them compare themselves to others was the only way to get back in charge. The police found that Carmen's acts were not spontaneous at all. She had studied chemical substances and ways to get them, and she had planned the delivery to the minute. Her actions were planned. She stayed away from clear evidence, used tools that let people stay anonymous, and made sure no one could see her. She didn't show any signs of regret during the probe. She talked about how she felt when she was with Anna instead of what had happened because of what she did. Carmen had tried to hurt someone on 2 different occasions, which shocked both her family and the rest of the school. In both cases, there was no clear reason for the acts, and the victims did not directly cause them. Carmen picked the time, the way, and the method herself. She said it wasn't about hurting someone permanently, but about feeling like she was in charge of her surroundings. In the end, investigators came to the conclusion that the problem wasn't with Anna or her peers' behavior. It had to do with how Carmen saw them as threats to her own sense of worth. At the city graveyard on June 3, 2025, a service to say goodbye to Anna was held. Family, neighbors, classmates, teachers, and people in charge of the school all came to the event. It was a calm mood. Her body was brought in the morning, and her father spoke at the service for the public. He thanked everyone for coming and talked about his daughter. According to Anna Neves, Anna is a quiet and honest person. He made it clear that she never looked for trouble, was dedicated to her studies, and cared about her family. He also said he wasn't looking for payback or to be blamed, but he did want the law to deal with what had happened. The school put out an official statement a few days after the meeting. The paper said that Anna was a good student who was responsible, kind, and involved. There was a picture of her with the message. There was a memory board in the school hallway where kids could leave pictures, notes, and flowers. The administration stated that there was an internal review going on and that more steps were being taken to help students with their mental health. What happened was not talked about in public by Carmen's folks. The public did not know her name. Under Brazilian law, children who are involved in crimes do not have to be identified to the public. The study was kept secret, and information about the case was not shared with the public. Carmen was sent to a center that temporarily houses kids who have been involved in crimes. The length of her confinement was not made public. Hearings took place behind closed doors. Anna's family was not allowed to be a part of the court case. As things stand, these kinds of cases are looked at by psychologists, social workers, and a judge from the youth court. If it is proven that someone is emotionally or mentally unstable, medical and social help may be given instead of a criminal sentence. Concerns were raised by Anna's father that such a serious act might not have any real effects. He talked about how important responsibility was and asked if a planned act like this could go through a process behind closed doors without any results. People on social media talked about what he said. The response from the people was strong. Some users were very mean to Carmen, while others pointed out her age and said she might have mental health problems. The city did not hold any official public meetings to talk about the case. The school and city officials sent their condolences, but they didn't say anything else in public. People outside of town quickly forgot about the story. 2 weeks after the funeral, there were no new news stories about the case, and it was no longer in the news. Nobody from the Neves family said anything else. The father of Anna stopped talking to reporters. The school took down the tribute by the end of the month. Carmen was still safe because of the law, even though they admitted to trying to kill someone twice, one of which ended fatally. The people still didn't know the answer to their question about accountability. It made people talk, but it didn't change the court's decision. Many people saw Anna's story as a real tragedy in their own lives. One painful question stayed with me. Why didn't anyone see what was going on when it was so close? It looked like everything was safe and calm from the outside. It wasn't a stranger who put them in danger. Someone in her group had sent it to her. That was the worst part for her family and everyone in the neighborhood. Someone they trusted, someone who seemed so close at one point, did them hurt.
Moving on to the next case. Heartbreaking case of Carly Ryan, a sterling teenager whose sudden disappearance unsettled her community. In 2007, Carly Ryan was deeply in love with her boyfriend, Brandon Kane. Police state that the two were very alike, but Brandon had certain dark secrets that Carly was unaware of. Investigators later discovered that Carly and Brandon had been seeing each other for some time before the crime, and their relationship appeared to be going well. However, events took a negative turn when Carly failed to return home after a night out with friends in February 2007. In the moments before she left that day, she behaved somewhat unusually, repeatedly asking her mother for hugs. It seemed as though she sensed that something was wrong, but was powerless to stop it. That evening, Carly's mother sensed that something was off, yet she had no idea how frightening the situation was about to become. Carly Ryan was born in Stirling, South Australia, in January 1992. Her mother, Sonia, raised her for the majority of her life. Her father's whereabouts have never been discussed, so it is reasonable to assume that he was simply not present. One notable aspect of Carly's life is that she grew up during a major surge in social media. When she was a teenager, it felt as though a new social media platform emerged every other day. This was before Facebook became the massive company it is today. The primary events of this case took place in 2006 and 2007. That period was when MySpace, Xanga, Tumblr, and other popular online instant messaging platforms were widely used. There were far fewer safety protections in place than compared to today. Being online during that time was both fascinating and risky. Since Carly was still just a girl, her mother Sonia was not entirely comfortable with her online activities. Sonia was aware of nearly everything happening in Carly's life because of how close they were. She would often pass by the computer to check what Carly was doing. However, she trusted that Carly was being cautious and responsible because she knew Carly was intelligent. Sonia says she was aware of everything happening in Carly's life. She participated in everything Carly did, though not in an intrusive or overbearing manner. Instead, she supported her in a way that reflected a healthy mother-daughter bond. Keep in mind that it was just the two of them, so it makes sense that they shared a very close relationship. At that time, the internet was, to put it lightly, problematic. People knew that Carly spent a significant amount of time on ratemebody.com. For those unfamiliar with the site, it functioned exactly as it sounds. Anonymous users would rate someone's body after they uploaded a photo of themselves. The primary concern with this website was that, as mentioned earlier, there were almost no safety measures in place. The platform prided itself on anonymity, so there was no certainty that the images being viewed actually belonged to the individual who posted them. Additionally, many teenagers frequented the site, so the implication is clear. It was not a safe platform and became a common gathering place for older men with harmful intentions. Thankfully, the website has since been shut down. Carly was often described as a scene girl. This is a broad label for teenagers or young adults who strongly identify with a gothic and punk-inspired lifestyle. That was the group she belonged to. They listened to bands such as Black Veil Brides, Asking Alexandria, and escaped the fate while reading Twilight or similar books. They dressed in black jackets, wore headphones, and chose black clothing from head to toe. This is not meant to mock or criticize anyone. I was part of that group as well. Even now, I still listen to all of those bands. One of the greatest punk albums of all time is Dying Is Your Latest Fashion. Carly discovered meaning and a sense of belonging within this community and lifestyle. She was also known to be very active on vampirefreaks.com, another goth or emo-focused website and store. However, she spent countless hours on MySpace. You could easily imagine what her profile looked like. It included all the typical MySpace elements: gothic selfies, heavy makeup, links to her favorite sites, and quotes from her favorite books. Carly made many online friends by sharing how much she enjoyed this type of activity. Carly became especially interested in one friend, an 18-year-old named Brandon Kane. Carly lived on the opposite side of the country from Brandon, a young singer born in Texas who had recently moved to Brisbane, Australia. They became friends almost immediately after meeting. It seemed as if they were meant to connect, given their shared taste in music and mutual interests. Their relationship deepened quickly. In real life, Carly began telling her friends about her new online companion. Soon after, Carly stopped referring to him merely as a friend and started calling him her boyfriend. Sonia was aware of Brandon, as were all of Carly's close friends. As Carly and Brandon grew closer, Sonia appeared pleased that her daughter had found someone with whom she could be so open. She did not think it was a major concern, despite Brandon being slightly older. Sonia said she would sometimes glance over Carly's shoulder to see their conversations, but she never observed anything alarming or unusual. Soon they were video chatting, and Brandon seemed genuinely like the person he claimed to be. This made Carly very happy. She was delighted to have someone so close, even though her boyfriend lived more than 20 hours away. But things did not remain normal for long before they began to turn unusual. Gradually, Brandon Kane began dominating Carly's life. Whatever one of them was doing, the other would immediately know because they shared everything. Most long-distance relationships, especially online ones, do not last very long, which made this particularly striking. Yet Carly and Brandon remained together for over 18 months, despite never having met in person. After about a year of communication, Brandon wanted Carly to meet his father, Shane, via video call. Eventually, Carly began discussing Shane frequently. It soon became apparent that she spoke about Shane nearly as often as she did about Brandon. At this point, Sonia started to feel slightly concerned. When she asked Carly why she was interested in Shane, Carly explained that Brandon and Shane were very close, much like Sonia and Carly were. Sonia advised Carly to be cautious, and Carly assured her that she would inform her mother immediately if anything ever felt strange or uncomfortable. Sonia felt reassured by this and dropped the matter. Over time, Sonia learned that Shane worked as a security guard and occasionally traveled for work-related events. In February 2007, while traveling across Australia for work, Shane was on his way back to Brisbane. He offered to stop by Carly and Sonia's home to deliver some birthday gifts that he and Brandon had purchased for Carly the previous month. Sonia initially found this somewhat unusual, but Shane arrived dressed in a security guard uniform, which made his explanation seem credible. Shane appeared to be the person he claimed to be, neat, professional, and ordinary in every way. Carly and Sonia felt so comfortable around him that they invited him to Carly's birthday party the following day and allowed him to stay overnight at their home. Shane also offered to take Carly shopping while he was in town. In my view, this was somewhat odd. Why would a man in his 50s take a young girl shopping, especially given that he was her boyfriend's father and they had only just met? There was no indication that Carly's mother accompanied them on the trip. The following day, at Carly's birthday party, things began to feel genuinely strange. From the moment Shane arrived, it was clear that something was off. He appeared visibly uncomfortable as Carly's family and friends began to gather. There was no single moment that you could point to and say, "Look at that." Sonia found it unusual, but she started to notice that Shane, for lack of a better word, seemed overly protective of Carly. It seemed as if Shane and Carly were bound together. They didn't allow her to get too far away. And he remained with Carly throughout the entire party, speaking to no one else for more than a few brief words at a time. The following morning, however, things began to go badly. If Sonia passed by Carly's room, she saw Shane and Carly lying on Carly's bed. One account claimed that Shane was lying on top of Carly, which would have made Carly extremely uncomfortable. Immediately, Sonia took action and told Shane that he had to leave at once, and he didn't appear to resist much either. He realized he had been caught. He gathered what he needed and left. After he departed, Carly told her mother that he had tried to date her several times, but she had rejected him each time, explaining she preferred his son over him. Carly then informed her mother about the gifts Shane had brought for her birthday. YouTube's rules prevent going into full detail about these gifts. One of them, however, was an outfit that number 50-year-old man should have given to his son's girlfriend. At last, Sonia understood the situation. In the days that followed, she did everything correctly. She blocked Carly from accessing her cell phone and social media and monitored her online activities much more closely. She also called Shane and informed him that he could never contact her daughter again, or she would involve the police. Clearly, all of this sounds severe, but it wasn't intended to punish Carly in any way. Everything was done to ensure her safety. Based on Sonia's statement since then, it appears she successfully informed Carly about the situation. Although it is tragic that this man took away many of Carly's freedoms, a parent cannot compromise on a child's safety. She continued to do what was necessary. On the other hand, we have all been teenagers at some point. Everyone knows that if you want to do something, you will find a way, regardless of what your parents do or say. Carly wasn't ready to let Brandon go. She admitted that what Brandon did with Shane was crazy, but Brandon was not at fault. Carly reverted to her old habits as soon as her mother told her she couldn't speak with Brandon. She communicated with him whenever possible, but this time she concealed it from everyone. The truth was hidden from her mother. In February 2007, after several weeks, Carly told her mother that she intended to spend the night with friends. She dressed in her best clothes and headed for the front door. Somewhat unexpectedly, Sonia recalls that this was when Carly began acting differently. She repeatedly asked her mother for a hug. She likely wasn't ready to leave. Without any clear reason, her mood had shifted. While Sonia was unsure what was happening, she couldn't help but wonder what kind of mother would refuse a hug from her daughter. Before departing, Carly told her mother, "Love you, Mom." The door closed, and Carly was never seen again. After going out with her friends that night, she never returned home. Sonia realized something dreadful had occurred when her daughter still hadn't appeared the following morning. That was when she contacted the police to report her missing, which is every parent's worst nightmare. But events were about to worsen for Sonia. Something horrific would happen to her that no parent should ever endure. She paced the house, pleading for any news regarding her daughter, when she heard a knock at the door and saw two angry police officers enter. This is never a positive sign, as everyone knows. However, Carly's mother was not pleased with how her daughter was found. According to investigators, a body was discovered floating in Horseshoe Bay early that morning. The deceased was identified as Carly Ryan. Carly had suffered at least 19 injuries before her death, each one more horrifying, dreadful, and tragic than the previous. This was discovered when she was taken in for further forensic examination. Security cameras and reports from witnesses would soon indicate that Carly was last seen on Horseshoe Bay Beach at approximately 9:30 p.m. the previous night. Later, it emerged that the people she had been with were actually one man and a teenage boy. They had arrived in the area in a blue car, and the description of this car later aided in locating them. Strangely, Shane and Brandon were not the two men captured on the CCTV footage. Because Shane and Brandon did not exist, as you see, it took police 11 days to apprehend Gary Francis Newman and his teenage son. Following Carly's discovery in Horseshoe Bay, Australian law stipulates that the names of juvenile offenders cannot be made public, so his son has never been identified. Immediately, it became clear that Gary was truly both Shane and Brandon. He had created an online persona to attract young girls and make them fall in love with him. He stalked them both online and offline, feigning interest in everything they liked. The fact that Gary either persuaded or compelled his teenage son to participate in the plan makes the situation even more disturbing. There is very little information available about Gary's son, so it remains unknown whether he was a willing accomplice or just as much a victim as Carly. Essentially, Gary was the one communicating with Carly online for over a year. When he needed to arrange a video call with Carly, however, he would have his son join to make the encounter appear more genuine. Both of them had shared pictures of their son. Shane, or rather Gary, was upset that he had to leave Carly's house after being caught lying on her bed. He had been executing this plan for more than a year and a half, and then it ended in an instant. Yet he could not allow it to conclude. One final time, he needed to see Carly. This time, he brought his teenage son along to assist him in completing the plan. After promising to meet her online boyfriend for the first time, Carly finally left her house that night. She told her mother she was going out with friends when in reality, she intended to meet her boyfriend, or so she believed. Carly, however, sensed that something was not right. Although her mother had warned her about both Shane and Brandon, Carly chose to take all the risks regardless. We know that Carly felt apprehensive about leaving her house that night because she recognized potential dangers. Her mother also suspected that something was amiss. But since Carly had lied about her plans that evening, there was little she could do. She had no idea how perilous her daughter's situation was about to become. I am not assigning any blame to Carly. She was solely a victim of this cruel, malevolent monster. Highlighting the fact that she ignored the obvious signs of danger is my way of cautioning parents and teenagers. If your instincts tell you something is unsafe, it probably is. Typically, there is a fire if you smell smoke. When you have a strong gut feeling, you should usually trust it. But as you might expect, events were about to worsen significantly. You may recall that Gary's house was not searched by police until nearly 2 weeks after Carly was found in Horseshoe Bay. When officers arrived at Gary's home, he was in the process of communicating with another young girl online. During the search of his residence, detectives examined every room and discovered a notebook containing lists of at least 200 different online identities that Gary had used. It seems likely that he used this notebook to keep his story consistent, so that those he deceived would not discover his true activities. Only 2 of his identities were Brandon and Shane, representing less than 1% of all the personas he had created. Investigators discovered in this notebook the names, ages, occupations, hobbies, and any other details associated with every figure he had fabricated. Considering that Gary communicated with Carly under 2 separate names, he could have had another 100 victims, assuming he used the father and son tactic with each one. The actual number of deaths could be far higher, but there is no way to know for certain. Police also recovered a significant amount of useful information from this notebook. It contained the usernames and passwords for all of his fake online accounts, which constituted the final piece of evidence needed to apprehend this man and secure his imprisonment. To be fair, however, incarcerating someone does little to ease the suffering of the family who now has one fewer person at the dinner table each night. In fact, Sonia has no one at her dinner table every night, which is even more devastating. On the day Sonia lost her daughter, her entire world collapsed. Her ambitions, her purpose, and her dreams vanished and will never be restored. Thankfully, Gary received a life sentence in prison. Regrettably, he will still be eligible for parole after 29 years, but given that he was 50 years old at the time of the crime, he will likely be around 80 before even having the slightest opportunity to experience natural sunlight again. Let us all hope that this day never arrives for Gary. After Gary's sentencing, his ex-wife came forward and discussed why they had separated many years prior. She revealed that Gary had been shockingly cruel toward her, striking her several times and coercing her into actions she did not want to take. This prompted his teenage daughter to realize she needed to leave with their 3 children when he focused his attention on her. Gary did not even awaken from this reality, which is regrettable. Later, he adopted his own son, whom he then incorporated into his online schemes. He repeated the cycle again. When everything concluded, Gary's son was found not guilty of any criminal charges. This strongly indicates that he was just as much a victim as Carly. Following this tragedy, Sonia felt compelled to act to assist parents whose children might face similar dangers. This led her to establish the Carly Ryan Foundation, which educates children and parents about the risks posed by online predators through accredited online safety programs and regular seminars. Furthermore, Sonia played a key role in enacting Carly's Law, an Australian statute that allows prosecutors to charge and convict online predators before they physically harm a child. The law enables authorities to examine chat logs to determine intent and convict adults who misrepresent their age to a child. Numerous lives have already been saved by this legislation, and Sonia was the driving force behind it throughout. Countless other children might have experienced the same fate as Carly if not for her efforts. To learn more about the Carly Ryan Foundation, I strongly recommend that all parents and even teenagers visit carlyryanfoundation.com. The resources page contains extensive current information to help safeguard children on modern platforms such as Roblox, Fortnite, and other social media or gaming sites primarily designed for young users. Sonia aims for all children worldwide to gain knowledge about internet safety so that one day there will be no further stories like this. No one should ever endure what Carly and Sonia suffered. You and I have a responsibility to protect these children. Moving on to the next case. Mandy Reynolds. A shadowed Texas evening, flames climbing in the distance. What initially seemed to be a minor brush fire rapidly transformed into something far more unsettling. As firefighters fought the inferno, they came across a horrifying discovery concealed within the smoke and glowing embers, a human corpse. Close by, a distressed white dog paced around the scene, refusing to depart as though attempting to protect a dreadful secret. From that instant forward, nothing about this case would be straightforward. And as investigators started assembling the pieces, they revealed a tale of betrayal, deceit, and brutality that no one could have foreseen. Mandy Reynolds entered the world in 1996 in the American state of Idaho. The identity of her biological father was never disclosed, but her mother, Carla, was already raising an older son when Mandy was born. In time, Carla entered into a new relationship with a man who decided to accept both children as his own. Together, they created a home where love and stability were at the core. It was within that nurturing setting that Mandy was raised, feeling loved and encouraged. From an early age, Mandy was noticeable for her giving nature and vibrant character. Friends and family members portrayed her as imaginative, warm-hearted, and consistently ready to assist anyone who required help. She carried herself with a brightness of joy that made her company reassuring to others. By the beginning of 2023, another meaningful connection had developed in her life. She had taken in a dog, a white puppy called Titan. For Mandy, Titan was more than simply a pet. He was a devoted companion who brought her days happiness, companionship, and a feeling of safety. He walked beside her during quiet nights, joined her on new journeys, and offered her comfort in difficult times. That same year, Mandy made a significant decision. She left Idaho behind and moved to Texas, enthusiastic to start a fresh chapter. The new surroundings were full of opportunity, and she imagined a future rich with progress. Among her greatest ambitions was enrolling in college, something she anticipated with resolve and enthusiasm. Throughout every stage of this change, Titan stayed at her side, inseparable from her everyday routine. Around February and March of 2023, Mandy re-established contact with someone from her earlier years. Unexpectedly, she received a phone call from her cousin Derek. He was only a few years older than her and had been missing from her life for a while. Their discussion, initially informal, soon resulted in a request. Derek asked whether he could remain at her apartment for some time. Staying true to her kind disposition, Mandy consented. She welcomed him without hesitation, unaware that this straightforward gesture of kindness would lead to consequences far more sinister than she could ever have imagined. The incidents that came afterward reached a heartbreaking climax on the night of Wednesday, April 5, 2023. Emergency responders got a report about a fire. At the beginning, it was described as a small blaze, perhaps merely burning bushes near a construction location. Fire crews and law enforcement were sent to look into it. As they labored to extinguish the fire, they encountered something nobody had anticipated. Inside the flames was a body, severely charred and nearly impossible to identify. What had begun as a standard response now turned into a crime scene. The responders promptly requested additional support: fire investigators, medical personnel, and more police units. Their documentation stated that the remains most likely belonged to a female based on the strap of a bra still noticeable among the debris. The evening was tempestuous. Intense rain and hail battered the area, making the task even more challenging for first responders. Contributing to the disorder, a distressed white dog circled the location, barking and howling without stopping. The animal would not depart, disregarding every effort by officers to soothe him. Some questioned whether he was attempting to drive them away or urgently guiding them toward the center of the disaster. As the hours went by and the flames were ultimately put out, the body was carefully retrieved and transported for examination. The identity remained undetermined that evening, but the faithful dog remained close to the location. By the following day, a passerby saw him again, still staying in the same spot, and informed animal control. After the dog was checked for a microchip, the answer came to light. His name was Titan, and he was registered to Mandy Reynolds. Investigators now possessed an essential lead. With the possibility that the body discovered in the blaze could be Mandy herself, detectives promptly contacted the phone number linked to Titan's registration. Initially, their call received no response, but shortly afterward, a woman called back, identifying herself as Mandy. The call was then transferred to the primary detective. After the customary introductions, he requested that the woman on the line describe her dog and state her address. She stated that her dog was a white cross between a poodle and a retriever, and that even though she resided in San Marcos, the dog had gotten loose while she was traveling. Her account, however, soon grew unclear. She spoke in pieces, vaguely mentioning being on the road, seeing friends, and traveling toward Wichita. None of it aligned coherently. This triggered the first warning signs for the detective, who chose to continue the conversation. He asked if she was staying in Robinson. She rejected that suggestion, maintaining that she was headed to Wichita. When questioned further, she acknowledged she had stopped at a rest area. Asked to confirm her name, she stated it was Mandy, matching the registered owner of the dog. When asked about where the microchip had been registered, she said she believed it had been listed under her fiancé's name, which was the reason they had decided to name the dog Titan. She explained that both she and her fiancé had completed the registration together. By then, the contradictions in her version of events had put the detective on guard. He persisted with his inquiries, attempting to better understand her movements. She became impatient, pushing to find out whether the dog had been taken to a shelter. The officer confirmed that it was in custody, but prolonged the conversation further to evaluate her story. When asked once more about her travel direction, she claimed she was going toward Wichita to leave the dog there. The reason, she explained, was that her fiancé wanted to visit his ill grandmother. At some point along the journey, according to her, Titan had dashed out of the car during a roadside stop. They had searched for several hours, she maintained, but had not been able to locate him. The detective requested additional specific information. Where exactly had this occurred? The woman described it merely as a rest area, comparable to a truck stop. When asked to provide details about the location, she was unable to offer anything further. She stated that the event had taken place around 1 a.m. the night before, although she was not entirely sure. The questioning went on. The detective asked what kind of vehicle she had been operating, in case authorities needed to arrange the dog's return. After pausing, she eventually answered that it was a silver Toyota Camry, a fairly recent model. At that moment, her impatience surfaced once again. She cut in, saying she was at her job and only wanted her dog returned. She apologized for any inconvenience and affirmed that she would come to retrieve him, although she noted the distance would exceed 120 miles. Still not convinced, the detective summarized the account, seeking clarification once more. The woman responded with annoyance, asking why she was being questioned over something so straightforward. The detective clarified that he had to verify why this dog, supposedly hers, had been found under suspicious circumstances. She confirmed her name once more as Mandy, and before ending the call, reiterated that she would go to the shelter to retrieve the dog. Less than 60 minutes later, the detective contacted her again. This time, his tone was gentler, almost conciliatory. He told her that their initial conversation might have begun on the wrong note. Then, he carefully outlined the true reason for his persistence. The dog had not merely been found wandering by chance. He had been located close to the site of a fire. At that location, investigators had discovered a human body. The detective, choosing his words cautiously, informed the caller that he could not disclose every detail, as the situation was highly sensitive. He alluded to the gravity of what had been uncovered. For a brief moment, silence filled the line. Then, the woman uttered an exclamation of shock. She quickly added that she had been extremely worried about Titan, emphasizing the large amount of money spent on the dog. She wanted to know how long he had been left outside. The officer explained that his questions were deliberate, aimed at constructing a timeline of events. She apologized once again, sounding shaken, and admitted she could not imagine what the dog might have endured. This became the detective's opportunity to probe further. He asked if Titan had run off the previous night, and she confirmed that he had. The detective noted that, if true, the dog should have been found by morning. This statement puzzled her. Ultimately, she admitted she could not provide a precise answer. During the conversation, the detective also observed that the phone number she was using was not registered in her name. When questioned, she confessed that the line belonged to her fiancé's grandfather. Pressed to provide the grandfather's name for verification, she became evasive and eventually snapped. She argued that the conversation was nonsensical. After all, her dog had merely escaped. Why was she being interrogated? The officer attempted to clarify that he was simply seeking clarity, but her tone became defensive. She accused him of being overly persistent, even implying she was being treated like a criminal. The detective emphasized that the timeline was critical, as it could indicate whether the dog had encountered the body discovered at the scene. The woman dismissed his explanation and demanded that he cease calling her. Before concluding the call, the officer stated explicitly that Titan was in police custody and could not be released. She responded that her lawyer would take over from that point. When the call ended, the detective's instincts indicated that his suspicion was justified. The woman's account was inconsistent, and her defensive attitude was far too strong for the situation. Acting on that intuition, authorities contacted local officials to perform a welfare check at Mandy's residence. What they discovered only intensified the mystery. The house was vacant. Mandy's belongings were gone, and her car had disappeared as well. Questions multiplied. Who had actually spoken on the phone? Was it truly Mandy, or someone impersonating her? Most importantly, was the burned body discovered at the fire connected to her disappearance? Investigators swiftly moved to trace Mandy's vehicle using license plate records. Their search revealed that the car had been seen in Wichita, over 600 miles away. This prompted a concentrated search for the missing vehicle. While that investigation was ongoing, forensic evidence delivered a breakthrough. Dental records confirmed the worst fear. The remains found at the fire site belonged to 26-year-old Mandy Reynolds. The autopsy revealed she had been shot in the head before her body was set on fire in an attempt to eliminate evidence. Investigators further determined that Mandy's remains had been placed inside a large plastic storage container, where a spent shell casing was recovered. On April 7th, police located Mandy's personal effects inside an abandoned truck left several miles from her residence. The pieces were starting to align, suggesting a deliberate crime rather than a tragic accident. On April 8th, the very next day, authorities in Wichita spotted the missing vehicle. Officers attempted to initiate a traffic stop, but instead of complying, the driver suddenly accelerated, weaving dangerously through traffic at speeds surpassing 130 miles per hour. What followed was a chaotic 30-minute pursuit across busy streets. During the chase, the suspect collided with several patrol cars in a desperate attempt to flee. Remarkably, no injuries occurred. Ultimately, the car came to a sudden stop, and the driver fled on foot, sprinting toward a crowded supermarket. Surveillance footage later captured the frantic scene as he pushed inside. Police, armed with long rifles, quickly established a perimeter, instructing bystanders to remain in their vehicles. Inside the store, shoppers panicked and fled while officers advanced. Moments later, shouting echoed from one of the aisles. The fugitive had been discovered hiding beneath a shelf stacked with canned goods. Officers commanded him to exit, then hauled him by the arms and placed him in handcuffs. The man was identified as Derek Daniel. He was immediately arrested, held on a $1 million bond, and placed in a Kansas jail pending extradition to Texas for the murder of his cousin, Mandy Reynolds. In addition to the murder charge, Derek now faced 15 separate counts connected to the dangerous pursuit. Inside the abandoned vehicle, investigators found a firearm. Ballistics testing confirmed it matched the shell casing found in the plastic container where Mandy's body had been burned. For Mandy's mother, the discovery was devastating. She had already lost her daughter, and now the prime suspect was her own nephew. In a fundraising post to cover funeral expenses, she expressed her belief that Derek had approached Mandy under false pretenses, manipulating her into allowing him to stay. It soon emerged that when Derek moved into Mandy's home, he had been on parole for a felony. His criminal record spanned years, including violent incidents dating back to his teenage years, one involving a firearm. Evidence against him mounted further when police uncovered surveillance footage from a store on the day Mandy's body was discovered. Derek was captured on video purchasing a large plastic container identical to the one used in the crime, along with a shovel and a gas can. The footage even showed Titan in the car, his head poking out the window. Investigators also suspected that Derek was the individual who had called the police station pretending to be Mandy, although this was never officially confirmed. What was indisputable, however, was the forensic evidence. The bullet retrieved from Mandy's body and the casing near the container both matched the gun in Derek's possession, a weapon registered to his grandmother. In January 2024, Derek pleaded guilty to a series of charges related to the Wichita pursuit, including fleeing or attempting to elude an officer, aggravated assault, illegal possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and theft. 2 months later, a Kansas judge sentenced him to slightly over 9 years in prison for those offenses. He was then transferred to Texas to face trial for Mandy's murder. The trial commenced in early November 2024. For the jury, the media, and the public, it provided a disturbing look into Derek's troubled history. The prosecution portrayed him as extremely violent and a continuing threat to society. On November 7th, after less than an hour of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Derek was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. In court, Mandy's mother, stepfather, and older brother delivered deeply emotional victim impact statements. They spoke of their grief, devastation, and the void left in their lives. As they spoke, Derek interrupted, hurling insults and even accusing his own cousin of criminality. Court officers promptly escorted him out, but tensions escalated between the families, leading to a heated confrontation inside the courthouse. Outside, as Derek was being led back to jail, he took the opportunity to speak to reporters. He reiterated that his cousin had committed crimes, and when questioned about his own actions, he coldly admitted, without remorse, "I am a criminal." His attorney later thanked the jury for their service, but expressed deep dissatisfaction with both the verdict and the sentence, announcing plans to appeal. For the district attorney's office, the result represented a victory for justice. In a public statement, they emphasized 2 key elements that shaped the case: the unwavering loyalty of a heroic dog and the coordinated effort of multiple law enforcement agencies across state lines. These combined actions, they stressed, brought justice for Mandy and safeguarded the community from a dangerous offender. As for Titan, he was placed in a secure new home with Mandy's best friend, who assured the media that the dog was thriving. Yet one haunting question remains. Why? What could have driven Derek to betray and destroy the very cousin who had offered him kindness and shelter? The truth behind his motives may never be fully revealed. Some secrets, it seems, remain buried, leaving a story marked not only by tragedy, but also by lingering, unanswered questions. Moving on to the next case. Morgan. This is Rod Metser, who is 36 years old. Someone severely beat his ex-wife Morgan in her home just 2 hours before this was filmed. About 40 minutes later, Rod went to her house and found her tied up on the porch. No one realized at the time, but this was all part of his scheme. A scheme designed to make him appear heroic and to win his wife back. If only Morgan hadn't sensed something was wrong and made certain she told everyone who assaulted her who they truly were. 12 years ago, in 2009, Morgan, who was 21, and Rod, who was 24, were happy together. They were thrilled to start a family now that they were married. From the time they were teenagers and first met, they loved spending time together. A terrible event occurred to them only 8 months after their marriage. Kevin, Rod's younger brother, died very young from leukemia. He was only 19 years old. After a year, Morgan became pregnant with their son. The baby was born prematurely, but had a dangerous heart condition and survived only 18 days. Only 3 months later, Morgan discovered she was pregnant with twins. Not long after, the marriage began to change and Rod grew angry. He worked trading stocks during the day and often lost money. Meanwhile, Morgan started her own interior design business, which did very well, but Rod became even more upset that she was successful. Rod begins to abuse her physically and mentally. He plays tricks on her and her closest family and friends to make her believe she was responsible for her injuries. Rod claims that the only reason she got hurt was that he had to physically hold her down. Her memories start to make her doubt herself, and she begins to wonder if she might be at fault. After a certain outburst, she decides to take a break and visit her parents with the children. She prepares the kids, fastens their seatbelts, and gets in the car. She looks back just as she is about to drive away. Soon after, Morgan chooses to divorce Rod. Rod can still appear unexpectedly, even when she leaves the house. He shows up unannounced during holidays, unsettling everyone. Morgan does not want to cause a scene in front of the children, making it difficult for her to speak with him. A few days before New Year's Eve 2020, Morgan learns from Rod that he has pancreatic cancer and requires her help. Even though their relationship is complicated, she decides to set that aside and invites him to stay with them. On the night before the new year, he sends her multiple texts, asking her out on a date. She politely declines, explaining she plans to spend time with her parents. She could visit them, but she chooses to remain at home instead. She calms herself, watches a movie, and goes to sleep just after midnight. She assumes the night will be calm, but she has no idea that terrifying events are about to unfold. The intruder attacks her immediately, swinging a gun directly at her head. She tries to stay composed, recalling some self-defense techniques Rob taught her. At first, she intends to leave a mark, like a scratch, so her DNA could transfer under her nails. But before she can act, he grips her arms tightly, restraining her. The assailant arrives prepared with pre-linked zip ties. He fastens them tightly around Morgan's wrists and forces her hands behind her back. The stranger does everything possible to conceal his identity. He covers his face with a black jacket, wears matching trousers and gloves. He speaks very little, but when he does, his voice is altered. Deep, rough, and unsettling, like Batman's voice. He then demands her phone and its unlock code. Morgan's home has a high-tech alarm system she always activates before bed. Her phone serves as the system's main hub, controlling both alarms and security cameras throughout the property. Afterward, he opens the door via the app and places a sack over her head. 40 minutes pass, and she remains lying there, motionless. Then she hears distant sounds. She gradually perceives someone approaching. Unable to see them, she fears the attacker might return. She immediately calls 911. Rod attempts to comfort Morgan while waiting for help. He rushed to her home to appear as the hero she needed, but in reality, that was far from the truth. The police are going to arrive shortly. First, they separate everyone at the scene and ask them to provide their accounts. Morgan is fairly certain that the person who attacked her is her husband. Before the attacker began choking her, she had no idea who it was. But when he said something unusual, everything changed. The intruder grabbed her, lifted her off the bed, and walked toward the door. At that exact moment, a memory returned to her. During her pregnancy, Rod often helped her out of bed by carefully lifting her in the same way the attacker had. Officers find it suspicious that Rod went to Morgan's house, since she had said she was going to stay with her parents. When questioned, Rod claims he did it because it was something he always did. Then they requested to see his phone, and Rod allowed them. They also discover that he secretly took pictures of texts on Morgan's phone while she was talking to someone else. Finally, Rod is arrested by the police after they use these pictures to charge him with violating privacy laws. This allows them to detain him and ensure he cannot alter the evidence. After the arrest, the team immediately begins their investigation. They quickly obtain a warrant and review the home security footage. Unfortunately, Morgan's phone and its cloud backup have lost all recordings from the time of the attack. Even worse, the person who attacked her took her phone when leaving, and it was never recovered. The cameras only provided footage from a few hours before the incident that could be used. The footage shows someone placing a $56,000 check under the front porch. After the attack, the intruder took the check. Soon, the police obtain a warrant to search Rod's apartment. During the search, they discover a suspicious bag of zip ties and a single piece of one in his room. The attacker had carefully prepared by pre-looping the zip ties he used to bind Morgan's wrists, leaving a chilling clue. The lab immediately tests the zip ties, and the results are indisputable. They are identical to the ones found around Morgan's wrists. At the same time, police find a strange book in Rod's apartment called 7 Ways to Be Her Hero. While examining his email, they uncover a fake account he created to send a fabricated letter claiming he had pancreatic cancer. He used this account to deceive Morgan and make her believe him more. They also find a bill from a doctor's office supporting his elaborate lie that he was battling pancreatic cancer. They discover that he had been searching for ways to alter his voice, methods to choke someone unconscious, ways to access a phone's password, and templates for letters falsely claiming someone has cancer. What they find next brings Morgan to tears. 3 days after the attack, Morgan returns to the station for another interview. The police ask her to recount the attack once again. They already know that no cameras captured the assault itself, but the footage of Rod arriving at her house shows something highly suspicious. In the video, Rod can be seen ringing the doorbell at the front door. After waiting for a while with no response, he walks around the house calling Morgan's name, as if he knew she was lying there exposed. Finally, the officers prepare to question Rod. They begin slowly asking about his recent health problems. Rod attempts to steer the interview by commenting on the detectives' facial expressions. But the detectives persist with their questions. Their main objective remains to uncover more about his internet searches and the evidence discovered at the scene. As the detective continues pressing Rod, his responses become increasingly erratic. He claims he has no connection to the evidence discovered at the scene and denies that anyone is attempting to frame him. A few hours after Rod Metser was released from police questioning, he was formally charged with 10 major crimes linked to the attack on Morgan. Some of these charges include breaking into a residence, kidnapping, aggravated assault, and sexual battery. The police also examined the bag where the zip ties were discovered. Using the UPC number, they can trace it directly to Lowe's. Immediately, they review local transactions and find that Rod purchased the zip ties with his credit card on December 30th. The police then review the video footage from Rod's apartment building. The footage shows Rod returning to his building just minutes after the incident. Later, at 1:24 a.m., the video records him leaving the building again, this time wearing a different outfit and carrying a plastic bag. Even after repeatedly reviewing the footage, the officers find no evidence that anyone approached him or tapped on his window. Morgan is prepared to testify about what happened to her as the victim when the hearing begins. 8 months after the incident, on August 4, 2021, Rod confessed to his involvement. He admitted guilt on 14 charges related to the assault on Morgan and the disturbing photos discovered on his phone. He agrees to a court deal in which he will serve 25 years in prison instead of the full 70 years. Moving on to the next case. Patricia O'Connor. She believed she was residing in a secure house, yet behind shut doors hid a frightening secret. An ordinary home stood in the southern area of Dublin in a place known as Mountain View Park. Two formerly married people, their son Richard, their daughter Louise, her sons and daughters, and her present partner all stayed beneath the same roof. Although the house was not very large, there were consistently at least 10 individuals living there at the same time. Daily issues rapidly escalated into continuous arguments and constant tension within such a limited space. Patricia O'Connor had been employed as a care assistant in the city hospital throughout her entire working life. She was firm, reserved, and exhausted from everything that life had brought her. The home they were residing in had been paid for with her personal savings. She had brought up her family and stayed there for the greater part of her life. She moved out for some time after divorcing Augustine Gus O'Connor. She began seeing someone new and had been living by herself for a period. But when that relationship failed, she returned because she had nowhere else to stay. That's correct. Gus allowed her to move back in. They stayed together under the same roof, like distant housemates, hardly speaking, yet sharing the same home, even though they were no longer a couple. Everyone knew Gus as a reserved, timid man, so he kept to himself. It was uncommon for him to assist around the house or become involved in disputes. Some individuals around him appreciated how detached he was. But it worsened matters at home, where things were already strained. Patricia and her daughter Louise had a difficult relationship. Louise lived there with her 5 sons and daughters, all of whom had different fathers, her mother, and she frequently argued because she did not work or contribute around the house. Stephanie, one of her teenage children, was reserved and kept to herself much of the time. The others were younger and did not take part in the conflicts at home, but they did live in the same pressured environment. Along with Louise, Kieran Green, who is now her boyfriend, resided in the house. He was unemployed, temperamental, and often acted poorly and aggressively. He and Patricia were constantly arguing. He did not obey her rules, avoided chores, and gave off an impression that she did not trust. It had been chilly and strained between them from the beginning. In addition to residing there full-time, Keith Johnston, Louise's former partner, and the father of her 2 eldest children frequently came to visit. He was not actually living there, but he went there often. For an extended period, no one knew what he was doing around the house. But it turned out that he understood far more than anyone had realized. 2 formerly married people lived together with their adult daughter, 5 grandchildren, her partner, and a man who had once been their son-in-law. Patricia still handled most of the household duties, even though she was growing older. On her own, she prepared meals, cleaned, and managed everything. The others did what was required of them, and seldom offered assistance. It was not up to Gus, Louise, or Kieran to handle anything. The house was too cramped, too loud, and too difficult to manage. Over time, Patricia began to feel as though she was losing authority over the house. She was no longer listened to by anyone. Whenever she attempted to establish boundaries, she was met with irritation or eye-rolling. The house she had built and maintained appeared to turn against her now. Patricia felt as though she no longer belonged there, but no one expressed it openly. Being silently excluded was the initial warning sign. People did not wish to alter anything, yet they also did not want to adhere to anyone else's rules. Patricia never requested anything unreasonable. She only asked that others show her respect by doing simple tasks such as cleaning up after themselves, not leaving dirty dishes scattered around, and following a daily routine. She received nothing in return except silence, avoidance, and a trace of passive resentment. The other adults paid her no attention. It was considered irritating to keep reminding her, so she was not appreciated for it. Kieran deliberately kept his distance from her. It seemed as though he was not listening to her, even when she spoke directly to him. Louise did nothing at all. She would either mentally withdraw when situations became difficult or claim that her mother was being overly strict. Patricia was unable to rely on anyone. No one else attempted to tidy up the house. She was the sole person who did it. No one followed Patricia's daily routine, even though she tried to adhere to it herself. She woke up early to tend the garden, prepare breakfast, and wash the clothes. The others slept late, created messes, and paid no attention to her efforts to keep everything organized. Even the children who lived there appeared to understand that the rules did not truly matter in that house. There was no longer a sense of family unity. No one cared about one another as they went through their separate daily routines. There were no shared discussions, and neither routine matters nor emotional issues were spoken about. A place that once united people like a home was now divided. They shared the same space, but not the same level of concern. At first, May 29, 2017 did not seem unusual. There were no shouting matches, calls to the authorities, or complaints of screaming. But Patricia O'Connor stopped going out of the house on that day. She stopped answering the phone. No one saw her at any of the locations she typically visited. Even with these abrupt changes, no one in her immediate circle appeared to believe her disappearance was serious. Valerie, Patricia's sister, was the first to raise concern. After several days, she encountered Gus while walking her dog near the O'Connor residence. During their conversation, he casually mentioned that Patricia had left the house with a suitcase and never returned. He stated that this happened on the evening of May 29th. He also mentioned that Kieran and Richard had already contacted the police. Valerie did not accept this explanation. She knew her sister very well. It was not in her nature to leave without notice or without any explanation. Patricia would not have abandoned her grandchildren and great-grandchildren without saying a word. She had never been seen or heard from again, was always in communication, and never acted on impulse. When the Irish police received the missing person report, they followed standard procedure and checked hospitals, hotels, and local shelters. But every lead proved to be incorrect. Patricia's bank card had not been used. Her phone had not placed any calls, and there was no trace of her after the time she was reported to have left. No one witnessed it. Not a single detail. Investigators requested a photograph of her mother from Louise, so they could issue an alert to the public. This was the first time that individuals outside of Patricia's family learned she was missing. Until then, no one beyond her close relatives had known about her disappearance. Nothing felt right at all. Even though someone was gone, no one appeared frightened. There was no organized search effort. Family members living in other parts of Ireland began taking action themselves. They attempted to contact each other, friends and people nearby, and even the press, but nothing surfaced. No one had seen Mary. They reviewed her routines again and attempted to determine what routes she might have taken, but they found nothing. Nearly a week had passed. No one had searched the house. She was said to have left a break and was not observed, and there were no reports of threats or violence made to the police. The limited information given was not enough to officially declare her disappearance suspicious, yet there was also no proof that she had departed willingly. Afterward, detectives began questioning the account provided by the family. There was no definite timeline for when Patricia was said to have left, and no one could verify seeing her that day. Even the statement that she departed with a suitcase was not supported by footage or testimony from anyone else. At the start of the investigation, concrete evidence was difficult to obtain, and Patricia's closest relatives and friends were unwilling to cooperate. Initially, it seemed like an elderly woman had gone missing, but circumstances began to appear different. There was more happening than the calm exterior suggested. No one in the family mentioned that the house was under surveillance from a nearby property. Security cameras were installed on one of the neighboring buildings that had a view of both the front and back yards. Everyone in the neighborhood was aware of them, including the O'Connor family. The police obtained the footage a few days after Patricia was reported missing. What they discovered was astonishing. At approximately 9:34 a.m. on May 29th, a woman carrying a bag was observed leaving the house. She walked calmly down the street and returned from a different direction about 30 minutes later. At first sight, it appeared as though someone was heading off on a trip. But upon closer inspection, something unusual became clear. The female in the footage was not Patricia. Stephanie, her niece, was present. She was dressed in Patricia's clothing and walked slowly, as if she wished to avoid drawing attention. These actions had been arranged in advance. Security footage from a neighbor revealed more than just a failed effort to stage Patricia's departure on her own. It demonstrated that multiple family members were cooperating. The instant Stephanie re-entered through the backyard became crucial evidence. The intention was to create the impression that Patricia had left voluntarily, which would mislead the police and postpone any immediate search of the property. When the footage was reviewed again, it confirmed that Patricia had never exited the house, not on May 29th and not prior to that either. It was also discovered that someone within the family had used her mobile phone to send messages after that date, giving the appearance that she was traveling. The public was not informed of this immediately, but it later became part of the obstruction of justice charges. Every adult residing there had a role in the plan. Kieran informed the police that Patricia had gone. Louise supported the identical account with a photograph. It was repeated once more by Gus, who showed no hesitation. They did not challenge the accuracy of what was claimed to have occurred, even though none of them had seen Patricia that day. A major aspect of their behavior was that they synchronized their silence and consistently repeated the same version of events to one another. Investigators identified inconsistencies in their statements. Louise stated that her mother's leaving was not unexpected and mentioned past issues, yet she was unable to point to a particular incident. Patricia had allegedly said she intended to depart, but Gus did not know where she would have gone. Kieran suggested that tension within the house might have been the cause. At the same time, other details did not align. Patricia did not appear to have prepared to leave. All of her belongings, including her clothing, medication, personal documents, and bank card, remained inside the house. This completely contradicted the claim that she had planned to leave. Those around her had not witnessed her departure. There was no taxi, no bus, and not even a passerby who could verify that she was going away. The deception unraveled rapidly. As soon as Patricia was formally reported missing and the public was asked for assistance, new details began emerging. Some witnesses reported that Kieran and Louise had behaved oddly. They avoided others, did not seek assistance, and seemed unconcerned. All of this pointed to one frightening reality. Patricia did not leave of her own accord. During the initial days, it became evident that her disappearance was a falsehood meant to conceal something far more serious. In County Wicklow on June 10, 2017, a family who had been on holiday was preparing to return home along an old route known as Military Road. As one member searched for a misplaced item in the bushes beside the road, they noticed something unusual among the tall grass and vegetation. At first, they assumed it was animal remains, but upon closer examination, it was tragically revealed to be part of a human body. The police were immediately summoned to the location. What followed was a large-scale, carefully organized operation. The area was secured. Air support was deployed together with military units and defense personnel. In the following days, additional body parts were discovered scattered along the roadside. More than 100 individuals were involved altogether. Across a stretch of roughly 15 miles, investigators located body parts in 9 separate locations. Initially, identifying the remains was difficult. Authorities believed the remains belonged to a man based on their form and the initial observations. That assumption shifted, however, as more fragments were recovered. After some time, forensic specialists confirmed that the victim was a woman over 60 years old. Yet at that stage, no connection was made to any ongoing missing person investigations. The absence of documents, clothing, or other personal belongings found with the remains made identification more challenging. Each fragment had been placed inside its own plastic bag. Investigators believed the body had been dismembered and disposed of within 24 hours prior to its discovery because there were minimal signs of animal interference or decomposition. The condition of the remains indicated that someone had attempted to delay the decomposition process, possibly by burying them or exposing them to cold temperatures. In Dublin, the search for Patricia O'Connor was still continuing since the remains had not yet been formally identified. The 2 cases had not been connected at that time. Police were still examining the possibility that Patricia had left voluntarily. The major breakthrough occurred 3 days later on June 12, 2017. Kieran Green entered a police station. His appearance immediately raised concerns. He was distressed, speaking rapidly and frequently contradicting himself. He stated that he was Louise O'Connor's partner and that he was responsible for her mother's death. From the outset, he emphasized that he had acted in self-defense. He claimed that he and Patricia had an argument that escalated into a physical confrontation. He said Patricia entered the bathroom while he was showering, holding a wooden stick and shouting at him. He responded that he pushed her away, causing her to strike her head and lose consciousness. He then described his subsequent actions. He said he placed her body in his vehicle, drove into the countryside and buried her in a makeshift grave because he was afraid. Several days later, he said he returned to the burial site, exhumed the body, dismembered it, and scattered the pieces in remote areas of the Wicklow Mountains so that no one would discover what had occurred. He maintained that he had acted alone and had not informed anyone. Investigators listened to him, but they remained skeptical of his account. The sequence of events was the initial warning sign. Green claimed that everything had unfolded without prior planning. However, at the recovery sites there were evident signs of preparation. The body parts had been sealed in durable plastic bags, and some were concealed in locations that were difficult to access. Forensic examinations also revealed that the head sustained multiple injuries that could not have resulted from a single fall. There were cut marks on the bones indicating that power tools had been used. Various types of tools were involved, which did not correspond with Kieran's version of events. Some of the cuts were clean and displayed the vibrations consistent with a motorized saw. It quickly became evident that although the body may initially have been buried, it was later dismembered and relocated, which required time, effort, and preparation. This did not resemble an impulsive act of panic. It appeared to demonstrate a significant degree of awareness and intent. Police began reviewing nearby hardware stores for items that could have been purchased in relation to the crime. Requests were made for surveillance footage and transaction records, particularly those connected to Kieran's relatives or acquaintances. Simultaneously, officers redirected their focus to the conduct of others residing in the house. Stephanie had previously been seen on video wearing Patricia's clothing, which had earlier been dismissed as a prank. Now she was placed under close scrutiny. Investigators examined her movements to determine whether she had been deliberately attempting to mislead them. Louise's behavior also came under examination. There had been tension between her mother and her partner, yet she had taken no action. It was now believed that her earlier statements were incomplete and at times contradictory after Kieran provided his account to the police. A far more extensive investigation was launched. Police examined not only him, but also every individual who had been inside the house in the days leading up to Patricia's disappearance. The incident was no longer viewed as a tragic accident. There were indications that multiple people were involved, and that they had collaborated to conceal a serious crime. The next phase of the investigation was to determine whether there were connections between Kieran and other men within the family. This directed attention toward Keith Johnston, Louise's former partner. Although he did not reside in the house permanently, he maintained contact with Louise and visited frequently. Investigators discovered that Keith and Kieran had shopped together at a hardware store shortly before the incident. They appeared on surveillance footage, purchasing saws, heavy-duty bags, chemical cleaning agents, and protective gloves together. The items had been bought after Patricia was believed to have died, as was revealed when the transactions were reviewed again. This contradicted the narrative of panic and indicated premeditated behavior. A new theory that aligned with the evidence emerged. The dismemberment was not an act of desperation. The crime had been deliberately concealed. Later, information from an anonymous source led police to a suspected disposal site near the Dodder River. 2 electric saws and an axe were recovered by a specialist search unit that combed the location. Forensic analysis confirmed that the tools had been used to dismember the body. On one of the blades, fragments of bone matching Patricia's remains were discovered. Everyone in the house was summoned again for questioning. Louise altered her statement. She had previously maintained that Patricia left voluntarily, but now she claimed she had only believed what Kieran told her and was unaware of the full truth. The interrogation lasted for an extended period. She stated that Stephanie had only assisted because she was instructed to, and that Gus had not observed anything unusual. Meanwhile, Richard, Patricia's son, provided a different account. He informed police that his mother never left the house on the day she vanished, and that the suitcase used to stage her departure was later located in his father's room. Richard's testimony was crucial. He was the sole family member who had not participated in the scheme. He confirmed that Louise had told him their mother intended to leave, which had been an effort to prevent him from contacting authorities. Investigators were convinced that this conduct demonstrated that more than one individual had attempted to conceal the crime. Police officially designated all 9 locations where body parts were recovered as crime scenes by documenting details about each site. Authorities identified the house along with wooded areas, the initial burial location, and roadside spots where remains had been dispersed. It became evident that there had been a homicide, dismemberment, transportation, a staged disappearance, and an agreement to remain silent. The trial concerning Patricia O'Connor's death commenced in Dublin on January 14, 2020. Charges were filed against Kieran Green, Louise O'Connor, Stephanie O'Connor, Keith Johnston, and Augustine O'Connor. Each faced allegations reflecting varying degrees of involvement, ranging from committing the murder to assisting in the concealment and obstructing the investigation. Due to the extensive evidence, the judge stated that the proceedings would be lengthy and complex. The prosecutor presented a detailed reconstruction of events. According to their account, Patricia died inside the house on the night of May 29, 2017. She died after Kieran struck her repeatedly on the head, resulting in her death. After being concealed, the body was later dismembered and transported to remote locations. The cover-up began that very day. Surveillance cameras captured Stephanie wearing clothing that belonged to her grandmother. Subsequently, the suitcase used to stage Patricia's departure was discovered in the house, contradicting the assertion that she had left of her own accord. The defense immediately shifted toward damage control. Kieran altered his testimony during the trial after previously admitting responsibility. He claimed that he had not committed the act and that the family had pressured him to accept the blame. He alleged that Augustine was the true perpetrator because he had engaged in a serious altercation with Patricia and had struck her with a club. Kieran says that Louise got him to admit after the event in exchange for her support. Kieran had stuck to his original confession for more than 2 years, so this rapid change came as a surprise. Louise said she had no idea that her mother had died or that Kieran had done what he did. She said Stephanie was part of the fake scene because she believed what her partner told her and had no reason to doubt it. But the prosecution showed Richard's comments in which he said that his sister was involved in hiding the crime. The prosecution showed camera footage of Kieran and Keith buying things like saws, heavy-duty bags, and more. They also showed film of the vehicle that was used to move the bodies. Multiple hard force injuries to the head and dismemberment, done with power tools, were confirmed in separate medical reports. This directly contradicted the claim that Patricia's death was caused by an accident. During the hearings, the defense tried to make the court doubt the reliability of the surveillance footage. But the court didn't buy their claims. Some of the accused were also tried to be blamed for something else. Each suspect tried to play down their part. Augustine, Louise, and Keith were blamed by Kieran. Louise said Kieran was to blame. Stephanie said she did what her mother told her to do. Keith said he had no idea what the tools were for. Augustine said that all he did was believe what his daughter told him. The prosecution stressed how well planned the lie was and how everyone in the family worked together to hide the crime. According to the evidence, everyone in the house knew about Patricia's death, but kept it a secret on purpose, telling the same stories to trick the police. The result was easy to see. This wasn't a scary time. A group of people worked together to try to hide a crime. The sentence was given on January 23, 2020. The person who killed Patricia O'Connor was found to be Kieran Green. The lack of self-defense, the dismemberment, and the attempt to trick detectives were all things that made things worse. He was given a life sentence in jail with the chance of getting out before 2040. The granddaughter of Patricia, Stephanie O'Connor, got 18 months in jail. She was found guilty of lying to the police by taking part in the fake exit. Watch a video of her carrying a bag while dressed in Patricia's clothes. The defense said she was just doing what her mother told her to do, but the court said her actions were planned and deliberate. Louise O'Connor got 2 years and 10 months in prison. The court said she had slowed down the justice system, planned to lie, and hidden proof. She also put a lot of stress on other family members and tried to stop her brother from calling the police, which was represented in her sentence. Louise said she wasn't guilty, but her reasons didn't make sense when looked at against the facts. Keith Johnston, who used to be with Louise, got 2 years and 10 months in prison. Surveillance video shown in court proved that he bought the tools that were used to cut up the body. However, the court found no proof that he actually did the act, but it did find that he actively helped hide the crime. Before the trial had even begun, Augustine O'Connor acknowledged that he had misled the police. That's correct. He confessed that he was aware Patricia was missing, but had accepted the false story that she had left voluntarily. As a result, he received an 18-month prison sentence. The court ruled that he would be eligible for parole after 1 year due to his age, and because he had cooperated with authorities in certain respects. The actual time served did not match the original sentences imposed. Stephanie was released after just 8 months. Following her release, she made no public statements and completely avoided public attention. Augustine served approximately 13 months before he was also released. Louise was released from prison in May 2022. After serving just under 2 years, she obtained housing through a government initiative designed to support former inmates. Keith was released in September 2022. He was photographed by the media in public settings and did not appear remorseful or distressed. As a result, Kieran Green remains the only individual serving a full sentence. He continues to be incarcerated in a high-security prison. Very few people believe that he will be granted early release before 2040. The court determined that all those convicted acted not to assist in the killing itself, but to conceal it. Although their degree of involvement varied, every adult in the household participated in the deception and the collective attempt to evade accountability. No one informed Patricia O'Connor's relatives that she had been buried. Only small groups of selected family members were invited to the private ceremony. None of her sisters were told. Relatives learned about the burial only through media reports published after it had already taken place. Individuals who had worked with her lived nearby or had been childhood friends were not permitted to attend. The service was initially not open to the public, as it was said to encourage peace, but over time it became apparent that this was part of a broader effort to erase Patricia's memory. Excluding her closest relatives from the funeral illustrated how severely the family relationships had deteriorated and demonstrated that some individuals were still attempting to avoid public scrutiny after the trial. After his release from prison, Augustine O'Connor inherited the house where Patricia had died along with the funds in her bank accounts. He sold the property for a substantial amount several months later, despite Louise being her daughter. She received nothing. The official death notice did not even include her name. Richard claims that their father accused Louise of emotional abuse and deliberately excluded her from the will. Augustine did not reconcile with his daughter, his grandchildren, or his great-grandchildren before his death in 2022. His final decisions only confirmed that he had become detached from those connected to the case. Keith Johnston made few comments about the events after his release from prison. Photographers captured him multiple times in public. He appeared composed and showed no visible signs of remorse or psychological strain. Many people believe that the sentences imposed on him and the others were far too lenient considering the severity of the crimes. No public memorial was ever organized in Patricia's honor. Her name did not appear in local records or memorial tributes. Those who knew her remembered her as someone who had cared for others throughout her life only to be harmed and abandoned in the end. Despite statements being made, the case left a disturbing question unanswered. None of those convicted ever provided a complete explanation for why they believed Patricia needed to be removed. The most troubling aspect remained unresolved. What could have led to such horrific acts within the family she had devoted her entire life to? It was a deeply disturbing case, yet one that will not be forgotten. Moving on to the next case. Heartbreaking case of Samantha Keithley, a devoted mother whose life was ended in the most shocking manner. Samantha Keithley, aged 33, was living what many would describe as a dream life. She held 2 successful jobs and raised 4 children in a beautiful home in Land O'Lakes, Florida. Her husband Kirk served as a respected deputy with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. On the night of September 23, 2018, that dream turned into a nightmare. Samantha was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina on December 29, 1984. During her early years, she experienced both sorrow and resilience. Her mother passed away from non-Hodgkin's cancer when Samantha was only 16 years old. She refused to let her grief break her spirit. Instead, she became the glue that kept her family together. Later, her younger brother, Taylor Starling, remarked, "We were best friends as children. Losing our mom at a young age brought us closer. She was always there for me, and she became like a mother to me." Samantha grew into a remarkable woman due to this early responsibility. She instinctively looked after and cared for others, even while facing her own hardships. Samantha attended Bloomingdale High School in Brandon, Florida, where her family had relocated. There, she met Kristen Kellen, who would become her lifelong best friend. They graduated together in 2003 and bonded because they had both been teenagers and because Samantha possessed a magnetic personality. Friends immediately recognized that she stood out from others. She enjoyed life. Later, Kellen would say that she was electric, stunningly beautiful, and just as her uncle had remarked, "I liked her and we had some wild, amazing times together." Yet Samantha's vibrant personality was not the only reason people were drawn to her. She instinctively knew how to make others feel valued and secure. This quality manifested in many aspects of her life, from caring for her younger brother to helping those in trouble. By September 2018, Samantha managed to balance 2 demanding jobs while raising 4 children. She had recently been promoted to assistant manager at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Tampa, where she had worked for over 10 years. She considered the casino a second home. Colleagues admired her dedication and knowledge of the business. Joe Lupo later commented, "Sam was part of our Hard Rock family for over a decade. She was genuinely loved by all who knew her. Our attention now is on supporting each other while mourning this tragic loss." Samantha did not intend to merely relax at the casino. She had also pursued nursing studies and explored her business acumen through real estate investments. Despite never taking a formal real estate class, she had recently begun working for Keller Williams Realty in Lakeland and was already succeeding. Damen Boyce, head of her real estate team, noted she adapted quickly and excelled at locating high-end homes. She achieved significant success in the Tampa Bay area in the brief period she worked there. Samantha displayed the same drive that had characterized her entire life, even though her real estate career lasted only a few months before her death. Chris McLaughlin, her colleague, nicknamed her Wonder Woman for managing all her responsibilities while raising 4 children. She worked early shifts at the casino, studied real estate law late at night, transported the kids to school, packed lunches, and assisted with homework. Those who knew her marveled at how she accomplished everything. She made it appear effortless. Beyond that, she ensured everyone around her felt loved and cared for. At Samantha's funeral, Rose Sinria recounted how Samantha had helped her leave an abusive relationship. This perhaps best reflected her character. "Samantha would tell me, 'Rose, you deserve better. So many people love you. You are not alone. You need to leave.'" Sinria said that even during life, Samantha was shielding others from the very fate that would eventually take her. Samantha always recognized when someone required assistance and stepped in to provide it. Samantha Keithley married Kirk Keithley in 2012 and together their families had 4 children. Mark, 14 years old, was Samantha's son from a previous relationship. Peyton was Kirk's son from an earlier marriage, and he was 7 years old. Olivia was 4 years old, and Evalyn was only 2 years old in their marriage. From the outside, the family appeared to have everything they could desire. They finally purchased their dream home in February 2018 on Terrazzo Way in the Bexley neighborhood of Land O'Lakes. The cream-colored 2-story house, which cost $322,000, represented the American dream realized. It was quiet, family-friendly, and near good schools. It should have been an ideal environment for raising their children. Kirk seemed like the dependable, steady police officer any family would want for protection. He had served as a constable for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office since June 15, 2009. Prior to that, he worked for the St. Petersburg Police Department. From 2003 to 2009, he served as a police officer for nearly 20 years without major incidents, making his career appear solid, though unremarkable. There were, however, minor warning signs that family members would later recognize with clarity and deep pain. According to Samantha's family, Kirk behaved as if he was superior to others and avoided social interaction at family events. Her older Starling brother said that Kirk acted like he did not want to engage with his in-laws during family dinners. His employment record was not disqualifying, but it revealed some troubling tendencies. In 2016, he received a warning for misuse of contact tools. In 2011, he was issued a counseling letter for a car accident that could have been prevented. More indicative was a 2008 report from the St. Petersburg Police Department noting his rigid personality and recommending he learn to work better with others. When law enforcement evaluates individuals, the term austere carries weight. It evokes the image of someone cold, distant, and lacking the interpersonal skills necessary for effective police work. That Kirk's supervisors observed this and believed he required additional training shows that colleagues could see his difficulty in connecting with others. Despite these concerns, no records existed of domestic abuse calls to their home. Even those close to the couple did not believe Samantha faced immediate danger. This is often the case when police respond to domestic abuse reports. The offender knows precisely how to avoid authority attention while maintaining control behind closed doors. Yet neighbors offered a different perspective, highlighting how household power can manifest subtly. The Keithleys lived across the street from Griffith for 5 years before moving to Land O'Lakes in February 2018. Griffith said that engaging with the neighborhood made her the unofficial mayor of the area. But Kirk Keithley was the one person he could never reach. She was very friendly to me unless Kirk was present. Then she would only say hello or wave, he said. In retrospect, this information is particularly frightening. It suggests that Samantha may have learned to alter her behavior when Kirk was around, a common pattern in controlling relationships. Griffith attempted multiple times to get Kirk to engage. He even connected him with another constable from Georgia, hoping their shared profession would facilitate communication. Griffith said, "He simply turned his back on us and ignored us." This lack of social interaction is another indicator of domestic abuse. Abusers often isolate victims from people who could support them. This isolation makes it harder for victims to seek help or maintain relationships that might provide clarity. Still, these indicators were insufficient to predict what would ultimately occur. Domestic violence specialists explain that a victim is most at risk when attempting to leave or asserting independence. Samantha's rising success in real estate may have represented precisely this kind of challenge to Kirk's control. The most tragic aspect of the Samantha Keithley case was that it was not an isolated incident. Data indicate that police officers are more likely than the general population to perpetrate domestic abuse, and when they do, the victims frequently die. Kirk's co-workers were unaware of what was occurring at home. This is typical in law enforcement families where domestic violence often goes unreported or undocumented. Police officers understand how to avoid leaving evidence behind. They are aware of investigative procedures, and victims often fear that calling for help will be futile because the abuser's colleagues might respond. Additionally, the stress inherent in police work, which involves constant exposure to violence, pain, and human suffering, can severely affect mental health. Some officers turn to drugs, alcohol, or aggression to cope if they lack adequate mental health support. In Kirk's case, toxicology results later revealed his severe intoxication on the night he killed Samantha. He He was too impaired to make rational decisions. His blood alcohol content measured 0.156, nearly double Florida's legal limit, and he had oxycodone in his system. September 23, 2018, began like many other evenings but quickly deteriorated at the Keithley residence. Samantha was ill, a minor condition that her husband should have understood and assisted her with. Instead, it escalated into 6 hours of abuse that ended in tragedy. Samantha repeatedly informed Kirk that she was sick and needed to be left alone. Allowing her a place to rest would have been reasonable for a loving partner. Instead, Kirk grew increasingly angry and hostile. The argument persisted for hours, and his conduct became more erratic as he consumed more alcohol. No one will ever know for certain what triggered Kirk's rage that night. Was it work-related stress, financial pressure, or resentment over Samantha's expanding real estate career? Or was it merely the lethal combination of alcohol, drugs, and a controlling personality reaching its limit? The situation became so dangerous that Samantha temporarily left and checked into a hotel. This detail is critical because it demonstrates that she recognized the risk and took action to protect herself. Likely, going to the hotel was her attempt to calm the situation and allow Kirk to do the same. It was the correct decision in an unjust circumstance. Tragically, Samantha made the fateful decision to return home, which resulted in her death. She may have believed Kirk had calmed down. She might have been concerned about the children or felt she had no alternative place to go. Regardless of her reasoning, this choice proved fatal. She may not have fully grasped how perilous the situation was because she returned. This is common in domestic abuse cases. Often, victims minimize the threat, not believing their partner could truly kill them. Those in abusive relationships frequently cannot accurately assess their own safety due to ongoing psychological manipulation. Samantha sent her desperate final texts to Kristen Kellen at 11:50 p.m. Kirk has lost his mind. Kristen, he's killing himself. He's been bothering me for 6 hours, and I've told him over and over again to leave me alone because I'm sick. These messages make it clear that the woman is upset and trying to get help from her best friend. Kirk has lost his mind. Makes it sound like this kind of behavior was out of the ordinary, even for their difficult relationship. She also said, "I just chucked my ring outside," which was a very telling reference to her wedding ring and a sign that the marriage was over. Samantha let him know that the relationship was over by throwing away her wedding ring. It was an act of disobedience that might have made Kirk even more angry. When these texts are sent is very important. At 11:50 p.m., Samantha was still living and could talk to her friend. She would be dead in a little more than an hour. They wouldn't get to Kellen until 2 a.m., which was too late for him to help. Didn't open it until around 2 a.m. Then I texted her back this morning around 7. It was too late, she said. It's hard to imagine how guilty Kellen must feel that her best friend's last texts were not read for hours. Kirk shot Samantha while she was sitting on the couch downstairs around midnight on September 24, 2018. Samantha was sitting on the couch, which makes it possible that she didn't see the attack coming. She might have thought Kirk was finally calm. It's possible that she had just lost her temper after being harassed for 6 hours. No matter what happened, Kirk used the fact that she was weak to do his last act of control. Kirk went upstairs, turned the gun on himself, and then shot Samantha. But he wasn't done with his violent act yet. When this nightmare happened in the house, there were 4 kids there, and what they saw and heard will forever scar them. When Mark Price, then 14, heard the gunshot and found his mother's body, he showed unimaginable bravery. He didn't freeze or get scared. Instead, he did something that saved his younger brothers and called for help. Mark managed to get away by crawling under the garage door. This shows that he was able to keep his cool even when things were going badly. Then he made the very important 911 call that let the police know about the tragedy. His words showed how horrifying what he had seen was, but they also showed a lot of calm for someone so young who was going through such a nightmare. My mom's been shot. My mom's been shot. Oh my God. My stepdad just shot my mom in the head. Said Mark was able to give the dispatcher important information, even though he was upset. The person calling him asked him where the guns were and tried to get more information about what had happened. My stepdad and mom had been fighting all night. She went to a hotel and came back, and I heard them fighting and a gunshot. I went outside and saw her bloody and dead. Mark's tone of voice when he talks about finding his mother's body is heartbreaking. No kid should ever have to see their parents like that, let alone have to explain it to 911. When the dispatcher asked Mark to explain his stepfather, he repeated, "He just shot my mom in the head. My stepdad shot my mom in the head." This shows that he was having a hard time understanding what had happened. When the mind is trying to make sense of something that it can't understand, it often plays back painful memories. After that, the cue stopped working. Dispatchers tried calling back for several scary minutes, but couldn't. They couldn't tell if Mark was okay, or if Kirk was still a danger to the kids. Mark finally called back and said that his phone wasn't working. The call had been taken over by a friend's dad who told the dispatcher that Mark was with him and having a tough time. He has got 2 young stepsisters right in front of the house. He said, "This information makes me feel better." The other kids were safe with neighbors who were watching them. When cops from Pasco County got there after midnight, they saw a crime scene that would stay with them for years. Samantha's body was on the couch, and she had been shot and killed. Kirk's body was found upstairs with what looked like a gunshot wound to the head. The 4 kids were all found safe, but they were all very scared. "It's devastating what happened here this morning," Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nacco said. "The moment that someone goes from protecting people to harming people, he loses the right, no matter what agency they're with, to call themselves a law enforcement officer." As we already said, toxicology tests showed that Kirk was high on both alcohol and oxycodone that night. Combination of these depressants can make it very hard to make good decisions, make people more angry, and make them do very dangerous things that could be fatal. Ted Freely, Samantha's uncle, would later say that alcohol and those pills don't explain anything. It's all on Kirk. It doesn't take away any of the pain. It doesn't justify anything. The tragedy shocked many people. The real estate world came together right away. Her co-workers set up a GoFundMe page for the 4 kids in just 24 hours, and it raised almost $80,000 for them. The kids were given to Samantha's dad to care for, and the tremendous financial support from the community set the stage for their future needs. There were a lot of people at Bell Skulls Baptist Church in Brandon on October 2nd, 2018. Ted Freely, Samantha's uncle, said the most important thing about how people should remember her. Freely said, "Don't boil this story down to her last few minutes when you tell it. That's not what her life was about. If you did that, you would miss out on 33 years of an incredible story filled with highs and lows, happiness and sadness, love, and most importantly, her children." The Samantha Keithley case revealed that police were not providing sufficient mental health care, but the crisis worsened when Constable Terry Strawn was killed just 3 months later. Strawn, however, was a respected veteran who had never been in trouble with the law and had recently been rehired as a school security officer. On December 19, 2018, he killed his wife, granddaughter, and daughter before taking his own life. He informed the police about each step of his actions. Kirk and Strawn were very different individuals. One was angry and intoxicated, and the other was calm and precise, yet both were decorated officers. Both destroyed families and highlighted how little attention their colleagues paid to warning signs. The Strawn case was especially tragic because his granddaughter attended the school he was assigned to protect, further damaging his reputation. Together, the 2 cases demonstrated the dangers of police officers committing violence against their own families and the reluctance of officers to utilize mental health services for fear of judgment. Following these twin deaths, full-time psychologists, emotional support dogs, chaplain programs, a behavioral resources unit, and mandatory suicide prevention training were implemented. Cultural changes were also made to reduce the stigma of seeking help. No one is exempt from mental health challenges. Chronister stated that saying, "Hey, I'm struggling," is not a sign of weakness. Samantha was an example of remarkable strength, love, and responsibility over her 33 years. She became a mother at 16, managed multiple jobs while raising 4 children, and aided friends in leaving dangerous relationships. Her death prompted important reforms that may have prevented similar tragedies for other families. Her 4 children, whom she cherished, carry on her legacy. Sam had always been protective, and Mark's courage in calling 911 demonstrated that he inherited the same sense of responsibility. Samantha Keithley continues to help others through the changes made as a result of her case, even after her passing. When remembering Samantha, we should not dwell on the cruelty she endured, but on her brilliance and light. Do not forget Samantha. Help is available if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse. Contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline if you are contemplating suicide. You are not alone. This was a disturbing case, but one that will not be forgotten. Moving on to the next case. Tony G. Leslie. Investigators with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's Cold Case Unit utilized advanced DNA technology to identify a suspect in a 32-year-old cold case concerning burglary and indecent assault that took place on Christmas Day in 1993. In the early morning hours of December 25, 1993, officers responded to a report of a burglary and indecent assault in Charlotte, North Carolina. The victim was taken to a nearby hospital for medical treatment, and an assault kit was conducted. However, with no leads available at the time, the case ultimately went cold. In a determined effort to pursue justice, the CMPD Cold Case Unit revisited the case nearly 3 decades later, in 2022, submitting evidence for analysis to Bode Technology. The breakthrough in the case occurred after the evidence was re-examined using grant funding from the Assault Kit Initiative. This resulted in the identification of a partial male DNA sample that matched Tony G. Leslie's DNA in the state combined DNA index system. Detectives interviewed Leslie at Scotland County Correctional Institution, where he is serving a 13-year prison sentence for multiple 2019 first-degree burglary convictions. Since that time, he has received 7 infractions for assault and failing to obey orders. Following the interview, Leslie was indicted on charges of first-degree indecent assault and burglary. On March 17, 2025, 48-year-old Leslie pleaded guilty and was given an additional 14-year prison sentence to be served consecutively after his current term. The victim of the indecent assault has been informed of these developments. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video. And remember, the search for truth never stops.